so più cosa son, cosa faccio, or di fuoco ora sono, di ghiaccio, ogni donna cangiar di colore, ogni donna mi fa palpitar.
The soprano normally gets the tenor. The mezzo rarely ends well.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the mezzo-soprano voice.
Well, the whole, what fascinates me is what's happened with pants rolls, with boys, because they've been played by tenors, mezzo-sopranos, and countertenors. But for mezzos, do you know the history of when mezzo-sopranos began singing these boy parts?
Singing pants rolls?
Yes.
No, well, I mean, it goes certainly back to
Handel's time.
Baroque times, yes, and certainly the late Baroque. And then, of course, it became a tradition that Mozart took up and was perpetuated by Strauss and
yes, and loved all along. Maybe it's the combination of women's voices together, but the gender bending is
well, the best example has to be Cherubino, I think, in the Marriage of Figaro, and there's something about the androgynous quality that emerges from a woman singing a boy's role, an adolescent, is very powerful, is emotionally...
can be confusing sometimes to the audience, but it definitely
works.
I
think that's part of it.
Part of the fun.
The confusing part is, well, it makes it so intriguing.
Yes,
and I suppose Rosenkavalier is another great example of the combination of soprano and mezzo-soprano.
Right. And two sopranos, the trio. I mean, Strauss so famously loved the female voice.
Yes.
I mean, what he did write for men was ungrateful at best, for the most part.
And sometimes the role of Octavian is sung by a soprano rather than a mezzo-soprano because it's written so high.
Well, and earlier in the 20th century, women typically sang all three roles throughout their careers. That's not done now because the houses are bigger, the orchestras are louder, and the voices are more differentiated than they were in the smaller European houses. But I kind of have a little bit of regret that I didn't get to sing those three parts.
And just as there are categories of soprano voices, so there are categories of mezzo-soprano voices. We talked about Cherubino and Octavian, both lyric mezzos, designed to convey youth and energy and passion, but there are also dramatic mezzo parts.
Yes,
One
and
thinks
they
of
are...
Amneris in Aida, for example.
And the difference between a dramatic mezzo and a dramatic soprano it's not much, is it? A couple of pitches, maybe.
It's more a matter of timbre, color, strength, power. A little like the dramatic soprano, the dramatic mezzo needs to have enormous reserves of vocal power and stamina to be able to cut across some very tempestuous orchestral writing.
Well, and the dramatic mezzo is also character-wise usually a darker figure, and in fact from boys one gets to sort of witches and mothers, and they used to say the hag roles in a way, which is not fair, but in fact they're often the dark side of the heroine's portrayal, good and evil and all of that.